We are out on 240 at Village Parkway with a likely fatal collision. State started taking it, but then realized that one of the involved drivers is an off-duty state trooper.
A trooper in Washington state who's responsible for informing the public about investigations is now the one making the news. Authorities say she crashed her car into a young motorcyclist, killing him. And her resistance in doing field sobriety tests instantly raised red flags. We are digging into recently released body cam footage, what's next for the trooper, and what we know about the victim, all with the managing partner of powerhouse law firm Morgan & Morgan, Dan Morgan. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. 35-year-old Sarah Clasen has been a trooper with the Washington State Patrol since 2012, but right now, she finds herself on the wrong side of the law because she could be facing a charge of vehicular homicide in the death of motorcyclist Jhoser Sanchez, who she seemingly collided with on March 1st outside of Richland, Washington. And authorities believe she may have been intoxicated at the time of this crash. Now, Clasen was in her personal vehicle, told police that she was returning home after picking up a pizza, when she said Sanchez, quote, came out of nowhere. She called 911 and at first didn't seem to think things were that serious, or at least that's what it appeared to be.
Are you injured at all?
No.
Okay. And it said you were in a Kia, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Did you hit a motorcycle?
Yeah, we are.
Okay. Do you see if the person's injured or breathing?
I think everybody's okay. Let me get on and check.
But once Clasen was out of the car, she realized just how bad things were.
Yeah, we have no pulse on I believe a pedestrian. I can. Yes, I'm a first responder.
You are a first responder?
Yes, I am.
If you want to start CPR, we can definitely get that
Okay.
going.
Okay, I'm going to start CPR.
Okay.
Now, first responders told police that Clasen was doing CPR on the victim when they arrived, but Sanchez, who was just 20 years old, was rushed to a hospital, but he didn't make it. It is a horrible situation. And now we're trying to figure out what happened. So now we have this police body cam video that shows Richland, Washington police responding to the scene. And it's State Patrol's jurisdiction, but once they realized that one of their own was involved, they had another local agency come in.
We are out on 240 at Village Parkway with a likely fatal collision. State started taking it, but then realized that one of the involved drivers is an off-duty state trooper. And they have a second fatal collision out in West Richland that they're now dealing with as well. So I talked to their sergeant, and I just spoke with Raby and Mason, and we all agree that we'll take this from state. So if you guys can come out. It sounds like state troopers are calling out their detectives to help do the physical evidence at the scene, but they requested that we run the investigation. All right, so to talk about the story, analyze more of the police body cam, I want to bring in friend of the show, Dan Morgan, managing partner of powerhouse personal injury law firm Morgan & Morgan, a great partner of ours. Dan, it's so good to see you. Have you worked on cases before where a law enforcement officer is involved in some sort of deadly incident off-duty?
Off-duty, I've dealt with cases with on-duty cops and pursuits that unfortunately have struck cars and resulted in death. I'm trying to think of off-duty. I'm sure they've come across our office. We deal with so many cases, tragic cases as well, that I'm sure it has happened. Definitely have dealt with off-duty officers being in serious accidents, though.
Because my question was in terms of, before we even get to the criminal charges or the potential criminal charges, like from a lawsuit point of view, would the police department be on the hook if you have an officer, let's just take the scenario here, take the allegations maybe as true, off duty, and let's say, for example, she was responsible, and let's say she was intoxicated, would the police department be responsible?
No, there'd really be no way to bring in the police department in that situation. Maybe if she was in the vehicle, and then if she had a cruiser that she took to and from work and she was off duty, but in the car, there's an avenue to bring in the law enforcement agency. But in a scenario like this with an off-duty cop doing, off-duty activities such as this, drinking and then driving, you can't then go and loop them in and say, hey, you had an employee, because then it would be the wild, wild west when any of these things happen. You'd be bringing in employees, not just law enforcement employees, but any employer.
Hey there, everybody. So I want to thank Morgan & Morgan for sponsoring this episode of Sidebar. Always love talking about them. Now, here is the incredible thing about Morgan & Morgan, and one of the reasons why I like talking about them so much.
Hey, say something about our big wins.
You're not supposed to come on camera. The reason Morgan & Morgan, America's largest personal injury law firm, is so big, and I'm sure you can guess it, is because they win a lot. And that's
Don't forget huge verdicts.
Yeah, they've won big verdicts, $6.8 million in New York, $26 million in Philadelphia. You see, the thing about them is they don't settle for lowball insurance offers from insurance companies, which is something.
Mention that you can submit a claim from your couch at home and on your phone.
Dan, they've completely modernized the process by submitting your claim, talking to your legal team. It's all done straight from your smartphone. Again, that's something
With 8 clicks or less.
8 clicks or less. Yes. You can see if you have a case in just a few minutes.
1,000 lawyers. We have over 1,000 lawyers.
All right. You know what, Dan? If you really think you can do better, maybe you should just do it yourself.
What Jesse was getting at is if you've ever been injured in an accident, you can check out Morgan & Morgan. You can submit a claim in 8 clicks or less. To start your claim, just visit forthepeople.com/LC Sidebar.
You came a little too close to me. It hurt me a little bit. I'm probably actually going to have to hire you guys now, but that was well said. That was well said. Talk to me about what the complication could be in terms of a defendant, okay? So either she's a criminal defendant or she's a defendant in a lawsuit as a member of law enforcement. Is that a complicated factor in a case like this, in terms of how a jury would view her, in terms of the evidence? Just what should we be thinking about in terms of her role here, even though, again, she was off duty?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be an important factor when it gets to the trial aspect of the case, if it gets that far, from a jury standpoint, because you're going to take the defendant as you find them, and if it's a law enforcement agency, well, who knows more about the rules than a law enforcement agency? I read that she even was doing PSAs about not drinking under the influence and not being a distracted driver about a year before this happened. So those clips, those videos, those are going to be, if I'm the plaintiff attorney on the case, those are going to be some of my first exhibits. She knows what happened here. She knows what she did was wrong. She knew better than anybody that these accidents are happening, that she even did a PSA to stop them from happening. And then she's the person that ends up being the at-fault driver in one of the accidents that a year before she's trying to prevent. So yeah, it's a terrible optics if you're defending that case where you don't want to get in the court. You probably want to either settle before or take a plea deal.
No, that's a good point. I want to get into the body cam with you, and there's a lot to get into. So this was recently released by Richland PD, and it shows a traffic officer approaching Clasen. Now, it's unclear what Sanchez's condition was at this time. He had been taken to a hospital. We don't know if officers on scene have any sort of update. So that could be maybe one reason that Clasen seems so calm when she speaks with police, that she doesn't realize maybe what is happening yet. Take a look.
Hey.
Hello.
How's it going?
Good.
Do you want to talk over here real quick?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I'm Steve. I'm with the traffic unit. So, just, I know this is probably uncomfortable, but we're just gonna, treat this like as if it was anything else. And we want to figure out what was going on, just in order to rule anything out.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, it's just as important to rule everything out as it is to confirm everything. So, I'm just getting here, so I know you already answered some questions from the other guys, but generally what happened?
So I went and picked up a Domino's pizza.
Okay.
I was turning left in here. I live right over
Okay.
there on Wild Canyon Way.
Okay.
I saw what I thought was a car with one headlight out.
Okay.
Right just past where the reflective sign is, that white one.
Okay, sure.
And so I was already slowing in the turn lane and saw him there, and I was like, I got enough time.
Okay.
I turned, and as soon as I turned, just felt the boom.
Okay. So as you're turning, you thought he was further away.
No,
Is
he
that
was
right?
definitely past that reflective sign
Okay.
when I
Okay.
when I saw him.
Okay.
And then I think I just, like I say, I thought it was a car with a headlight out. Didn't
Okay.
realize it was a motorcycle. I didn't
Okay.
realize the rate of speed
Okay.
they were going at.
So did you think he was going pretty quick?
Yes.
Okay.
Because from that reflective sign, it's kind of, I live here, so
Sure.
that's always my, like, general rule. If they're past that sign, then you got
Okay.
plenty of time if you're already
Okay.
slowing to turn in.
Gotcha.
And
So you know, based on making this turn and numerous times,
Yeah.
that you know how to judge that distance.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, good to go. Okay. All right. So you're probably aware we're just gonna like run this like normal. So I'm just gonna run you through some voluntary field sobriety tests if you're willing to. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think I want to do any.
Okay. All right. What about the PBT? You willing to do a voluntary PBT?
I don't want to do any tests
Okay.
based on the
Okay. Understood.
circumstances. Yeah.
What about? Obviously, you just gave me a verbal statement. Are
Mm-hmm.
you willing to write down a statement on paper?
Yeah. you can
Okay.
do the same.
All right. Let me go grab a statement
Okay.
form, and I'll let you fill that out. And then I know you want to get out of here, so
Okay.
we'll do that. That way, we just kind of lock everything in
Okay.
for today. So,
Sounds good.
all right. Yeah. Just give me a few minutes
Yeah,
here.
no worries.
Yep.
All right, Dan, there's a lot to break down in this. And I think one of the interesting things is, I mean, in your practice, where you deal with accidents so many times, you're watching this body cam. It is very different seeing an interaction here with one member of law enforcement speaking to another member of law enforcement. What was your takeaway from how she was reacting and what she was saying, and also how the officer was questioning her?
Yeah, there's definitely a nonchalant kind of demeanor about her, especially given the circumstances, that she was just going through, administering the CPR and things of that nature, and knowing that he's left an ambulance to kind of be so nonchalant about the scenario. But yeah, it was kind of a laid back conversation. Her story seems somewhat off, that she was trying to justify for the reason it's happening. She also kind of knows how the investigations go. And he could kind of tell too, just by, if an officer asked me if I was willing to submit to a PPP type of 2 test, I would have no idea what he's talking about, but clearly they're sharing the same lingo and nomenclature there. So he's talking to her as if he knows he's an officer and going through kind of the checks that, field sobriety, know this, no, all right, you already gave this statement, will you give us the written? Yes. So yeah, it definitely seems like he's, if it was another DUI suspect that was not a law enforcement officer, I think there'd be a whole different, tone, a whole different, type of accusatory. Why, if not, why not? Let's not get you out here early. It's like, no, okay, there's gonna, if you refuse the blood test, what's gonna happen. You're most likely gonna end up down, either doing a blood test or at least forfeiting your license and going to jail, not getting you out of here.
And by the way, I'm going to get to the fact that she refused these tests in a second, but just on a layman's point of view, because you handle these cases a lot of times, and we will get into the blood test because the results haven't been released yet, but does it appear that she might be intoxicated? Just from my perspective, there were certain times when she's speaking where it almost sounded like slurred speech. I don't know for sure, and obviously we'll see what the tests come back with, but did you get that sense?
I got, no, the sense that I got that she was somewhat with it. It didn't seem like, you see some of the body cams that we watch and it's, oh yeah, this person is loaded right now. I really didn't see that. I did see that it was kind of a nonchalant, but that as soon as she, denied the test, then yeah, obviously your attendance go up. There's at least, there's a reason you deny it. I know that I think she alluded to some stuff later on about maybe a glass of wine, but then didn't answer it. But, there's reasons why you don't answer it, because if me and you, if we know we have nothing to hide and 0.00 is going to get us out of there, let's hurry up and blow and get the show on the road.
Right. Okay, so let's keep that in mind, because the officer has Clasen fill out a statement about what happened, and then he broaches whether she would be willing to do field sobriety tests to rule out any sort of intoxication.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I would love to rule out impairment, but without the fields, it is hard to rule that out. Obviously,
Yeah.
it's voluntary. I won't ask you again, but there may always be that question
Yeah.
down the road.
I just rather not.
Okay.
Yeah. I understand, but I know how it goes too. So
Yeah. What do you mean? You know how it goes?
even if there's like a little, if I had a glass of wine earlier or something like that, I just don't want, I just don't want to do it.
Okay.
Yeah. But no, I definitely don't feel impaired. I don't feel like there was impairment as an issue. I
Did you have a glass of wine earlier?
not gonna answer it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to grab the furrow?
No. I think she has something on board.
Do you really?
Yeah. Yeah. So
Is there
we have to.
is there going to be enough to
I-
get a search warrant?
So yeah, I'll write it. I mean, unless you want.
What changed?
So I was just studying her. She got a couple misspelled words on here.
Okay.
She wrote sigh, and she said 100 feet. Sorry, I'm going a little quick. She estimated the distance between the guy on the motorcycle and her to be 100 feet, which that's way more than 100. That's like 500 feet. She said she was almost through her turn when clearly she was at the very beginning of her turn. Her eyes are a little bit glassy, a little bit.
Those
But-
lights be?
But could be, but we got to err on the side of caution.
Okay.
I do not have a great sense of smell, but I think I smelled a little bit of odor of alcohol, enough for me to say. And then I told her, I'm like, hey, we just want to rule out impairment. And by you not doing it, I'm like, I'm not going to ask you again, but I'm like, we can't rule it out. And she's like, yeah, well, if I would have had a glass of wine earlier, I know how this goes. And I said, did you have a glass of wine earlier? And she said, I'm not going to answer that. So
Okay.
I think with everything, we have to. I mean,
Okay.
I will write the search warrant. But yeah, I'm still recording. I'm still recording. I would have loved to have ruled it out.
Okay, so Dan, you are seeing this officer picking up on certain clues here. And the fact that she has chosen not to take the tests, and by the way, that's her right to do. She doesn't have to take those tests, right? I mean, talk to us about
Absolutely.
her refusal to do that and how that could affect the case and what you're taking away from his observations.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's in a lot of states have that rule, and there's different implications behind whether you take the test or do the test or not do the test or blow or not blow. A lot of states will allow you to not do the blow test, but instead have your blood drawn. Vice versa. But a lot of times there's just implications. I know in the state of Florida, for instance, you would lose your license for a year. A lot of states have that same thing. So even if you refuse to blow, which is your right, you can still have your rights to drive stricken for your refusal to do so. So there's our implications there. But yeah, I mean, eventually, if that's going to be the worst evidence or the best evidence for you. So some criminal, and again, we're more personal injury side attorneys, so we're not on the criminal as much. But yeah, you're going to have a lot better time defending your client with no blood test, no blood alcohol, and just the videos of them acting. With this, a jury watching this video could easily say she's not drunk, she's acting fine. She talked to the officer normally.
And what would be the defense perspective, even in a litigation? What would be the defense perspective if you're representing her? Listen, she doesn't have to take these tests. How do you say that doesn't make her look suspicious, or that it doesn't show that she's liable? Because somebody else might look at it and be like, well, of course she doesn't want to take the test because she doesn't want to show what really happened here. So what's the counter argument?
Yeah, I mean, you really have to hammer down on this is her right. This is what she that she's an officer. She knows her rights. She knows that she doesn't have to, and that this evidence wouldn't be admissible. And at the same time, you have murder suspects that plead the fifth and don't get on the stand, and the jury can't say, well, he didn't testify, he must be guilty. The judge has to really do his part of laying in the fact that her not blowing, you cannot, that cannot be the reason why you find her guilty. That cannot be considered. You can only consider what's in evidence. There's nothing of that in the evidence. Her refusal to do so, cannot be presumed as guilt. So, there's a lot of that. But yeah, I mean, if you're a juror and you're on there, I mean, we're all human. So despite the best judge's instruction and this and that, you still a little bit about, you're going to wonder, if not, why not? Why didn't she blow if it was 0.00? And if it was 0.0, below the limit, 0.0002, she's fine too. So if she was really scared of a sip of glass of wine, it's going to be fine.
And look, so let me tell you what happened. So the officer confers with his colleagues and decides it is appropriate to arrest Miss Clasen.
All right. So, like I said, we were really trying to rule alcohol out. I'm not convinced that alcohol wasn't a factor. So right now you are under arrest. Okay.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and put your hand behind your back. So we will be doing a search warrant for blood. Okay. That way there will be no questions.
And this is interesting because as she's loaded into the back of that patrol car, Clasen seems to be changing her mind about doing some of those field sobriety tests, but it's too late.
Well, so we're trying to treat this like any other incident, and
Yeah, I
typically once the opportunity kind of comes and that you say you don't want to do it, it's voluntary, and then if you want to do it,
Well, I would do a
After.
voluntary breath test at the VAC, but I just didn't want to do the fields.
okay. So you wanted to submit to. I think with this, the significance of this, I think it's probably we're gonna probably need a search warrant. Okay.
That's fine.
All right. I appreciate your
Yeah,
cooperation.
no worries,
Dr.
of course.
Dan, talk to me about that. That seemingly now I'll take at least one of the tests. What does that tell you?
I mean, that one, she doesn't like the situation that she's in the back of a cop car in handcuffs, and let's try to get out of here and maybe not go to the, spend my night in the local jail. That's probably the first thought going through her head. But to that, again, it might be that she knows, hey, I did have a glass of wine. It's been 3 hours since this accident happened. Now there's a really good chance that I'm going to be well under than what it was 2 hours ago when this whole thing started. There's a lot that goes into that, even with the blood being drawn. When does that actually get drawn? It could be 9 hours, 8 hours after the initial collision happened, and if it was 3 glasses of wine, she's going to wait out the time, and the limit's going to be down. So there is, there could be some gamemanship there. I don't want to assume anything, but yeah, that she's willing to now. That she said she didn't want to do the field sobriety, but she will do the breathalyzer. It could just be that she knows her limits is now going to be low, and she wants to blow and get out of there. But I think we all both we heard the first tape. She clearly denied all tests before she was in handcuffs.
So let me tell you what happens next. So she is taken to the police station where she's put into this interview room, handcuffed to a bar on the wall, and the officer leaves his body cam in the room with her, and she sits there for 3 hours. And when the officer comes back in, he lets Clasen know that he's gotten a warrant for a blood draw, so they head over to the hospital to make that happen.
All right, sir. How you doing? All right, so they did get a warrant for the blood, so we'll go and do that now.
Okay. Could I use the restroom for
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's one right across the way, so I don't bother throwing cuffs on there.
I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah. Yep, just right here.
Okay.
I'll just be right outside here.
And a police spokesperson confirmed Clasen's blood was collected during a news conference.
Probable cause was established for her arrest, and she was subsequently booked into the Benton County Jail on a 72-hour hold for vehicular homicide. Investigators obtained a court-authorized search warrant for a blood sample from her, which was collected and is pending an analysis. That is standard procedure for a case of this magnitude where there's a vehicular homicide or even a vehicular assault. Blood draw is the frequent way to go.
And the spokesperson said it could take weeks or even months to get the results of that blood test, which, Dan, I'm confused about. Why would it take so long? I'm a little confused by that.
I'm confused by it too, hearing that. I mean, I think if I went to my local Quest, I'd have those results, in 24 hours. So I'm not sure why it's taking that long. Maybe it has to go through a whole different protocol since there's a vehicle homicide connected to it in the state of Washington that they have. I know the traffic homicide report in a lot of the states that we're in, yeah, it does take a month, maybe more, to get the final results of the full investigation because they want to put it all at once for the family. You'll get the crash incident report with the basic information, but then they'll do the whole traffic homicide investigation to get the results. So maybe their plan is to not release the results of the blood test until they put out the entire report. So that's why it's being held up. But yeah, we're living in 2025. We can get those results somewhat quickly.
And by the way, even though she, hasn't been charged, and this is still under investigation, it is very important for law enforcement, I think with the press conference and the release of the body cam, for a sense of transparency, and they're doing things by the book and not, and if there was a conflict of interest, they're trying to mitigate that and saying she is being treated like any other motorist who is involved in this kind of crash. That's really important in this, right, Dan?
It is, exactly. They don't want to, and I think even seeing this footage, a lot of people are going to say, well, I know if this was me or this was my son or if this was my, wife, husband in the situation, they wouldn't be getting niceties. But yeah, I mean, they definitely want to be able to say we did it by the book. We smelled it. She refused tests. If they had the tape of she refused 2 tests and did a written statement and did this and then they let her go, then it just smells to high heaven. So they're at least trying to keep the appearances of this is how things are doing. And for the most part, they are. I mean, a lot of, like we talked about, a lot of time did go by. You said she was in there for 3 hours. She's at the scene for probably another 2. So, 5 or 6 hours between the blood draw and the incidents is very favorable for her. But, that's not too uncommon in other cases for there to be that type of gap.
By the way, police also confirmed that Sanchez, the victim in this case, he didn't have the special endorsement on his license, which was needed in Washington to ride a motorcycle. Does that affect anything here? Does that affect the legal analysis? Or at the end of the day, he's still killed? Does it become a question of how did that happen? Does it matter that he apparently didn't have that proper documentation?
From a civil standpoint, most likely, really from both standpoint, most likely not, because the end results would happen, even if he didn't have a license, but was he at fault, if they come to the conclusion that he was speeding or this, that, or the other thing, it could exonerate her in that. But that one fact that he didn't have his license probably is going to play too big of a factor into the case. Now, if it got to the trial setting, and I'm her attorney defending her, I'm obviously making that a huge red flag. This guy shouldn't have even been on the road that night. He wasn't allowed to be on this motorcycle. He wasn't licensed to be on the motorcycle. He was on the motorcycle anyway, but for him illegally driving on the motorcycle is never, you go down that rabbit hole and spin it for the jury to kind of get that emotion evoked. But as far as an insurance company looking at it and saying we're not going to settle this case because of that, that's not going to be a factor. Or a police prosecutor saying we're not prosecuting this case because that's not going to happen either.
Now let me go to the criminal aspect for a second, or the potential criminal aspect. So she was booked on a 72-hour hold, saw a judge, was released on her own recognizance. A prosecutor asked for $150,000 bail. The judge noted that Clasen has significant ties to the community. She was cooperative on scene, not concerned about Clasen fleeing. But her release does come with conditions. So she has to have an ignition interlock device on any car she's going to be driving. It's a breathalyzer that doesn't let the driver get moving until they can prove they're sober. And while a Benton County prosecutor appeared at that initial hearing, the state says the case will be handed over to a special prosecutor who's going to be the one actually deciding if Clasen will end up facing a vehicular homicide charge. And for now, she has not been officially charged. She's on administrative leave pending the outcome of the case. It's unclear if she's going to be paid during that time. But the Richland Police Department investigator was asked during the news conference last week what the difference was between a charge of vehicular homicide and vehicular manslaughter.
So vehicular homicide was due to the presence of intoxicating substances in her system, what our officers observed and what they believed to be there.
Now, Clasen's defense attorney told reporters that there's not enough evidence to charge Clasen with anything. Do you think she's going to be charged with vehicular homicide?
If the blood test is not in her favor, I think, it's very, very likely.
And look, in all of this, and we've talked a lot about the body cam, the logistics of it, the legality of it, we can't forget the victim in this case, 20-year-old Jhoser Sanchez, was born in Venezuela, had recently graduated from high school. He lived here in the United States. He lived in the Tri-Cities area for around 7 years, according to his family. He was working as a forklift operator at Lamb Weston. It's a food processing plant. And his family spoke with Apple Valley News in a very emotional interview. His mother said, "When you see Jhoser, you feel amazing, like the sun is shining on you. That was Jhoser, the sunshine of our family. Now we've lost him. It's hard for me to even talk about my son." And Sanchez's father told Apple Valley News that they just want a fair resolution, saying, "When I heard it couldn't be an accident, that the driver was also an off-duty WSP trooper, I thought, oh no, now the truth is even more difficult to uncover. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but we want the truth. We want justice. And the family started a GoFundMe to raise money for funeral expenses. His mother wrote on the GoFundMe, he was a bright and loving soul who brought joy to everyone around him, and his absence has left a void that we cannot begin to describe. Now, Dan, you and your firm are all about the victims. I have to imagine these are some of the toughest conversations to have with family members of those who were killed in these kinds of accidents or these kinds of cases. What do you tell the family? What are those conversations like?
No, it's really tough. It's, no amount of money is ever going to bring their loved ones back. No amount of money is ever really going to fill that hole of what was lost, as her describing him as the sunshine of, her life. No amount of money is ever going to bring that sunshine back, into her life. It's always going to be a void. So, those conversations are tough, and to really let them know, what we're going after isn't to fulfill that hole. That's never going to be filled, but it's to bring some sort of justice, some sort of closure to the circumstances, and to allow not only the defendants in the case, but to let the community as a whole know that his life mattered, that there was value here, there was value lost, and we are recognizing this loss as a society.
It's a sad case. Really, your heart goes out to the family here, and we'll keep a careful eye on what happens next on the legal aspect of it. But Dan Morgan of Morgan & Morgan, so good seeing you. Thank you so much for taking the time, and appreciate your perspective and your partnership with Morgan & Morgan. We're really happy to be a part of it. So thanks so much, Dan. It's great to see you.
Awesome. Thanks for having me back. Wish it was talking about happier circumstances, but anytime you need me, I'm here for you.
All right, everybody, that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.